I was invited to a private meeting with President Jacob Zuma. In this video, I'm going to explain to you the meeting that I went to with the MK party and its leadership, what was discussed and what I thought about it. Now, on the 16th of June, the MK political party, which is the third largest political party by votes from the 2024 elections, they had a press briefing in Sandton at the Capitol Hotel. Now, in this press briefing, it was attended by much of their leadership, and it was really packed. A lot of people showed up. Now, what had happened in this press briefing was that Jacob Zuma wanted to address the nation on the way forward. As many of you know, that the MK party did not attend the first meeting of parliament in South Africa. They were not present, and they said that they were going to release a statement, and this is the statement that everybody's been waiting for. I was in attendance, and the things that came out of that statement were very, very interesting. And we're going to look at them, we're going to discuss them, and we're going to understand what transpired and what my thoughts about what transpired was. Now, if you are not a subscriber to this channel, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel. It helps us grow immensely when you subscribe to the channel. Now, we're going to kick it off by understanding what happened at this important meeting and what was discussed. Wanted to speak at this meeting. He was not.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Ubaba wanted to add on to the.
Until he wanted.
I'm sorry because I flew.
Yes.
But I thought I should just make some comment on one point. This new bill, the government of national unity. This actually is meaningless. I don't know what it means. Totally meaningless. Totally meaningless. We exercised the government of national unity in South Africa when we had finished agreeing to negotiate and establish the government in South Africa that would be voted by everybody. It had never happened because we had never voted in the past since the time immemorial. Only whites were voting. And we had decided to fight for our freedom after when we were talking that let us be free. Instead of the government responding to that, they actually banned the ANC. In other words, silenced the black people from talking about freedom, about whatever. We then declared war. And there was a fight that took place since 19 what?
61.
The ANC was banned in 1960. And then at the end of 1961, in December,
Jacob Zuma is going into
we declared war to fight for our freedom.
When they formed the government.
And there was a fight in South Africa.
He was part of
for many years.
Formed the first government of national unity in South Africa. And what that meant was that he knows the history of what a government of national unity is. And what he was explaining in this meeting, he went forth to explain that he was part of the government of national unity, and he doesn't understand or know what they are now saying. Because if you recall, they announced that South Africa is going into a government of national unity instead of a coalition. And a lot of people thought that this government of national unity means or is similar to what was done in 1994 when the first government first came in. And he was saying yesterday that this government of national unity is nonsense because it's actually a coalition of the ANC and the DA. And he went on to explain that when he was actually there in 1994 when the government of national unity was actually formed, and he then goes forth to explain that what is being done now is actually incorrect. And he says that they are playing on the minds of South Africans that this is not true what they're saying as a government of national unity, and he wanted to inform people about it.
Or the blacks telling the whites what to do, blah, blah, blah. There were many important issues that were looked at. We, as we were all ready for peace, and as you know, in addition to the hatred between the whites and blacks, there had also emerged a fight between IFP and the ANC, which was
Now, one of the things that came out of this meeting was that the MK party would like to meet with the SABC, the national broadcaster, so that they can begin to explain to the national broadcaster that it is wrong to call something a government of national unity when it isn't. And they said that if needs be, they will protest to make sure that the media stops using the wrong terminology, because that's not what's going on. And if maybe you missed it, last week, we had in South Africa the first sitting of Parliament, and the President, the Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker of Parliament were selected in what was called a government of national unity. And the MK party is saying this is meaningless. They said it's nonsense, and they're saying the South African people are being lied to. This is not a government of national unity. This is a marriage between the DA and the ANC. And President Jacob Zuma went on to explain that this is actually fooling the public, and that's the reason why they want public broadcasters and the media to stop reporting it as a government of national unity and start calling it a coalition, because that's what they believe that it is. And in his explanation, he went deep into detail, explaining that this is wrong and they are planning on taking action against it. Now, if you saw the news, on Friday, there was news reports of how the markets reacted when the announcement happened, because there was an announcement that South Africa is a coalition between the DA and the ANC. And this is what we began to see within the markets. This was some of the announcements that actually happened. Now, this is from Twitter. And from Twitter, you're able to see what the tweet actually says. And it's very interesting that a lot of people on Twitter felt the same way. It says, shares in companies that earn most of their income in South Africa, so-called SA incorporated shares, exploded on Friday after the ANC, DA, and the IFP signed a framework agreement to form a government of national unity. Now, this is what Jacob Zuma was saying, to say this is not a government of national unity. We're saying that this is actually a marriage between the DA and the ANC, and they should not call that. Now, if you look at this, this is true. Shares of big banks like Investec picked up by 1.5% after hearing the news. Old Mutual picked up by 7%. A lot of the shares, OUTsurance grew by 6%, Pick and Pay by 6%, ABSA by 5%, Truth. So a lot of shares, MTN by 5%, the JSE 4.98, Southern Sun 4.6, Redefined Property 4%, ShopRite 4.5%, Netcare 4%, Net Bank Group 4.2%, PPC 4.1%, Life Health Group 3.9%, a lot of companies, Sanlam 3.7%, Vodacom 3.7%, GrowthPoint, a lot of companies picked up in shares when they heard that the new government is going to be the ANC and the DA going into a coalition, as what Jacob Zuma is calling it. Now, this is important to explain because the markets react to what politics or politicians do. Whatever the political climate, it will always affect the market. And some economists say it affects it by 10 to 15%. Some say that it affects it by less. But we saw companies grow when it was announced. Now, I want to explain what the MK party said yesterday, to say the reason why the IAC went forth to announce the elections. And when the MK party, so if you remember what happened during elections, the MK party said elections were not correct. They said things needed to be changed. The numbers in the elections were not correct. They said the votes were rigged. And they went on a press briefing and they said the elections should not be announced. And the elections were then announced. And part of the reason why they were announced, it was said that they were announced so that the markets don't go into panic. Because the moment an election is not announced, or they say that rigging has happened, the market's going to panic, the markets fall, and people lose money. So the reason why they were announced is because they said that they wanted people to know that there's nothing wrong with the elections so that the markets are getting affected. But however, what we began to see is we began to see a situation where yesterday, the MK party came out to say, why do people vote? Do people vote so that the markets can be happy? Or do people vote because the will of the people wants to be heard? And what they were saying yesterday is they were saying they're not very happy about the fact that a lot of things went wrong with the election and things were brushed under because people wanted to please the markets. And they came out to say that very strongly, to say they are going to be going to court to ensure that there is a new election in South Africa because they do not recognize the election results. They believe it was rigged and they believe that it was wrong. Now, a lot of people, and myself included, a lot of people are concerned about markets. They believe that when the markets do well, the country's economy does well and more jobs can be created. However, the point that MK is raising is that when people vote, are they voting for the markets to become richer or are they voting for their lives to change? And that's what the MK party was saying. And that was the crux of what Jacob Zuma was sharing, even in the private meeting, to say it would seem that South Africa's political system is working to please the markets and not the citizens. Now, you'll recall in South Africa, there's over 30% unemployment rate, meaning majority of young people in this country are unemployed. Now, another important point that they raised yesterday was to say that why do democracy happen? Why do we allow the process of democracy to happen? Is it so that the markets can be pleased and we can see the growth that many people, because people became billionaires through the results of the elections. Make no mistake, when markets grow by 7%, by 5%, there are people who literally knew about this agreement was going to happen. They placed trades and they became very rich. Even when you go and look at the JSE, you'll find that people who knew that this was going to happen, they basically placed trades and they made money. And if they leveraged it, they made even more money. And what the MK party was saying is that, do people in Africa vote to please markets or do they vote for their lives to change? And I thought that was an important point. And I want to hear from you in the comment section. What do you think about that? What do you think about that statement? Now, yesterday, the press briefing was read by the spokesperson of MK, Ntlamulo, and he read it very, very well. And it was very clear, but also very instructive, to say that they had their legal team and they've given their legal team instructions, and Senior Advocate Mpho was there and he explained much of the journey that MK has been through all the court cases and the court cases that they've won. He even went to saying that they've won all the court cases that they've actually encountered as the MK party, and they explained that in the beginning the ANC took them to court because they were using the name umMkhonto as Sizwe, which actually came from the ANC, and the ANC wanted it back. We all remember that court battle, but he came forth to say that they've been victorious in every single court battle that they've actually had. Now, what was interesting to me was a point where they then said that they are going to approach international courts to try and fix the situation in South Africa, because they said that South African courts are biased or they're captured, and they're going to go to international courts so that international courts can actually assist in ensuring that there is justice in South Africa. I thought that was very interesting. What are some of your thoughts on that? And did you actually watch the speech that was given? Now, Jacob Zuma had a lot more to say, and I want to play a little bit more of what he had to say, because there were some very interesting points that he raised in the press conference that I believe are worth listening or noting.
Unity that is meaningless, says nothing. It's nothing. We're just misleading one another to think that it's a good thing. Other people even forgot, thought that they could in fact be together with the DA, because they just put this word, government of national unity, others are hiding behind. Now it has become such a thing. But by we have abbreviation GNU. Now, if I was a journalist, I would have written a long article to help people here understand that it's just a fake. They just wanted to be together for various reasons of their own. And the others must have been maybe whatever. I don't want to say, just imagine. But the critical issue that I'm saying, my brothers and sisters, as journalists, really, we need to be helping us on these matters. You know it, you see it, you know. I don't think journalism should be one-sided. It should be fair. It should. If I was a journalist, I was saying, but this thing we said it 30 years ago. What it is now? I think you'll be asking these people who have come, what are you trying to do? Are you saying South Africa is at war? You therefore need to have peace. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
There you have it. You ended off by saying, sorry, guys, sorry. And really what they were saying as the MK party, they had a lot of things to say. But what Jacob Zuma said, or President Jacob Zuma, he said that the media did not question every single thing that was going on during the elections. And he says the place of the media is to report what people are saying and what people are asking. And he says the media just went on and reported as a government of national unity, but they never actually questioned to say, but if it's a government of national unity, what is the definition and how are all the other parties included? Because yesterday they explained that parties are not included in it, so it can't be a government of national unity, they're actually a coalition. So he went on to say the media is very biased and the media is not reporting properly. And I want to know what are your thoughts about that. We also had the SABC reporting. The SABC was actually there live and many of the journalists were actually there as well reporting. And some very interesting takes from the SABC yesterday. But for me, really what was interesting was what one of the journalists, Samkelo, actually said. He said, the sellout ANC of Ramaphosa has taken us back to 1948. Millions and millions of our people have realized that the freedom starts with the removal of the ANC of Ramaphosa. And this is a statement that Jacob Zuma actually said yesterday. He said that the ANC of Ramaphosa, and he kept mentioning it in that way. He also said that for the record, umMkhonto Sizwe is of strong view that the 2024 elections were rigged and that the results announced by the IEC are not a true reflection of the will of the people. And he went on to explain this. And, you know, much of the things that they said there, they were showing evidence of what they believe actually happened. And they gave some factual evidence that they said they looked to. And they're going to the electoral court to be able to present this evidence. And we'll be seeing this court case drag on in the next few days, and we'll be seeing everything happen there. But really, what was interesting to me was the fact that a lot of them, or a lot of people that were there, and when I say them, I must give context. There were a lot of political parties that were also there, and a lot of the political parties they were in full agreement. And as you know, I was also there as the president of Arise South Africa, and I'll explain my stance at the end of this video in the private meeting that we had. So you have to watch till the end to get that information. But one of the things that they also announced is that the MK party is going to be the official opposition in South Africa, that they're going to parliament. They will be the official opposition as the third largest party immediately when the first two biggest parties, or the first two parties that won the most amount of votes, are now in coalition. That directly means that the third one becomes the opposition. And they said they would be working with the EFF in parliament as the opposition. So that was some of the interesting things that came out of there. And a lot of them, you know, some of the statements, Mr. Zuma said there was no government of national unity in South Africa and described the partnership as a white-led, unholy alliance between the DA and the ANC of Ramaphosa. This was reported by the BBC. Now, a lot of you will know that a lot of religious leaders were also there, and a lot of religious leaders are saying that this is an unholy alliance. There's a lot of Freemasonry in this. There's a lot of cults in this. So a lot of them had a lot to say there. But really what we're seeing is that whenever Jacob Zuma has a press conference, the whole world wants to listen. And one of the things that he pointed out, that he said yesterday, he said that what we're seeing in South Africa is something that many other countries don't actually go through. And he had a lot to say about this. And one of the things that were pointed out yesterday, which I thought were quite interesting, and I saw it on Twitter, Clement Manyaptela, on Twitter, he says, Helen Zille tells the Clement Manatela show, we won't vote to impeach a president we voted for. Even if Palapala matter is brought back in parliament, she says this was part of the agreement with the ANC, so useless. There is no new evidence of criminality on the president. DA won't support any motion. And here, people are asking to say, but the DA and the ANC are so different. So how will this alliance or this coalition work out when Parliament, because Floyd Shibambo of the EFF said that the first order of business that they want to bring to Parliament is to impeach President Cyril Ramaphosa on the Palapala scandal. And Helen Zille is now basically saying that one of the things that they agreed on to form this coalition with the DA is that if that's ever brought into Parliament, they will not vote for the president to be impeached. And this is something very interesting that somebody also brought up on Twitter that I want you to have a look at. And it's brought up by the African Research Desk, Mighty. He says that why was this term not put into the document that was shared to the public? What other secret terms and conditions are there to this deal? It seems like the public is not being told the whole story. We read the deal that was signed and it did not include this. And he's saying that the deal that was signed as this government of national unity didn't include that some people will be protected, that whenever votes about impeachment happen, they won't vote about it. He says that this is now new information. So he's asking to say, what other things are being hidden in this coalition agreement that the public might not know about? And a lot of people are starting to see through this coalition. A lot of people are complaining. ANC members are also complaining. You know, there's a lot of scuffles that are happening around the coalition and a lot of interesting takes that people are saying. But I want to play you this clip where Jacob Zuma basically closes off the press conferences. This is what he says at the end of the press conference, and I found it very interesting. He challenged the media. And he said, media, we want to hold you accountable to a higher standard. We want you to start asking questions about the legitimacy of this election.
Because there are also lady journalists. No. I am very worried. I think these elections have caused more worries to some of us. Because South Africa is a country that has a history that put many of us into serious issues when apartheid laws were the laws. Even if you're doing the right thing, we were sentenced to prison, we were done everything. We fought to go over this. Then we got freedom. Even when we were discussing the point I was making earlier, that we're very careful that we should not act in the manner that would make us continue fighting. We wanted to finish fighting. Hence, the government of national unity, which worked. We were a country that came from, it was not just a country with no democracy.
Here he begins to explain a little bit about the history, what they went through, some of the challenges that they went through. And near the end, he begins to go a little bit deeper into some of his thoughts. And I want you to listen to this.
Democracy. Under democracy, I served 15 months, having committed no crime, having been in no court that dealt with me. If we don't notice that South Africa is moving back to, what do you call it, by the way? What is another word of such government? Dictatorship. Dictatorship of those who have the money. Dictatorship. Are we ready to stand for this and just keep quiet, we who can write or talk to the newspapers, whatever? Now, where have you ever heard that such a big member of political parties, not one, not umMkhonto Sizwe that people don't like, the whole big group of political parties all complaining simultaneously that we are robbed here. We want this to be looked at. And people who are supposed to be helping us, I see, say sorry, we're not doing it. People who are supposed to be looking at the law and the respect of the law in the country, the judges are there making people to, what is it,
Take an oath. Take an oath.
To take an oath. When they know that there are complaints, they are supposed to be looking after our democracy. Now, nobody, for an example, I'm not sure whether I've read maybe a time I don't read the newspapers, because who has raised the issue about the number of political parties who are not happy with the decision of the IEC? Who? Is that not a story to write? Are you part of the democratic country? Because democracy does not allow such things. I'm not asking you questions because you said we are not supposed to ask questions. I don't know why, because we are also human beings like us. Nah, sengibuzi.
Yeah.
Sengibuzi pendula.
This is a claim for 2 hours. The screen is a claim for 2 hours.
I mean, you have elections ongoing. Suddenly, the machines have crashed. There's been no investigation from real investigative, what to call it?
Investigative journalists.
Investigating terrorists. Because you guys, you terrorize us. You terrorize us. Other people don't terrorize. Now, I'm saying this because I want to put it into our mind. Be fair, deal with the issues with anyone on the equal basis. Very important. Now, I want to say we are slowly moving towards a situation. There are people in South Africa, if they commit no crime, but they get charged, everything happens. We have an example of a leader of a party this side. What is it? It's called.
So he went on for the rest of the evening explaining his heart, explaining what his thoughts are, and really going through what he thought is going on in South Africa. And I was one of the people that were invited. I was invited as my capacity as the president of Arise South Africa. And I was invited by the MK party. And when I got there, there was a private meeting that I had with the president of the MK party and their leadership. Their SG was there. The TG was also there. The spokesperson was also there. Many of the leaders were there. And I listened in that meeting and really got to understand what Jacob Zuma is saying. Now, I know that a lot of people have opinions about the MK party. They have opinions about Jacob Zuma. But I listened without anybody else's opinion. And I wanted to understand what is it that Jacob Zuma is trying to achieve and what message is he trying to say. And really, if I could summarize it, he said in that private meeting that his biggest concern is that if elections happened and many political parties are saying they were rigged, many people are not happy. He said if we allow this to happen, it will never stop. In the next elections, there'll be more rigging, and rigging will be the culture of South African elections. And I thought this is quite important because Africa, where a lot of people complain about election rigging. And it seems every single time there's election rigging and people go to courts, it just continues. People are so quick to have a new government in, and it just so continues. And his biggest concern was to say, if we allow this to continue, when then does it stop? And there were many other political parties that felt the same way, and many of them that are also part of the court case that's happening. So there are court cases that are coming up. The ATM political party is going to court. ARA is also leading another court case. And we also have the MK court case. And he was saying that the parties that want to join in the court cases, bring your evidence and let's present that evidence over to the courts and let the courts then decide. And I, as a president of a political party in ARA, South Africa, we had a lot of complaints on numbers on the elections to say that there are people who voted and the receipts of voting were either changed, some of them were thrown away, and a lot of political parties are littered with these complaints. And he was saying, do we just give up and let the complaints die, or do we actually go to court and have a re-election? And that's where he really left the bet. And that's the reason why I was there. I was there to listen in on what he had to say and to understand what they were saying as the MK party. And my thoughts, because a lot of people have asked me and said, what are your thoughts? I must be honest with you. My thoughts is that I do agree. Elections in Africa are always littered with corruption. Always littered with people that steal votes not being counted properly, and elections is a very simple process. Yet, it takes so long to prepare for elections, but every time there's elections, there are always issues. And I believe that we cannot just allow this to happen, because what if it is their plan that every time there's elections, there's frustrations, and quickly announcements or results are given out? I believe that elections are too crucial just to be a quick thing, like a quick fix, and let's quickly move on. No. I believe elections are very crucial and they should be handled with that sensitivity. And elections should be free and fair because they must represent the will of the people. So I am in support of this to say we must, one, change the way we vote in our country. Two, we must be more sensitive when it comes to elections. We can't have every single election cycle. Elections happen, people complain, and it's quickly swept under the carpet, and we have to just move on and accept the results. We can't allow that to happen. Elections need to happen. We need to verify that the right thing actually happened in the elections, ensure that every single complaint is dealt with, especially the ones with proof and evidence. Before we announce elections and just move on, we must ensure that things are done properly. So I do agree with that, and that was the content of that private meeting. And I truly hope and wish that this is a lesson for the future to say we must allow the will of the people to happen. It cannot be that elections happen, we quickly rush to announce things so the markets can be happy, and the people that voted are feeling like, but the people we voted for, we don't actually see that happened. And I can show you the amount, there's even a Google Drive that's been shared from many different political parties of many slips, many errors, many things, and even some cyber security specialists saying when the election system crashed for 2 hours, there were changes that happened. And I myself have dealt with the IEC myself, and you all know the many things that we've been through. And as a result of that, I do agree with this to say we can't allow this to happen. We can't allow elections to be something that happens and people complain about the results and we just brush them over and have to continue quick in a hurry because the markets are waiting. We must let things happen thoroughly. I want to wish every single young South African a happy Youth Day. It was Youth Day in South Africa, and I recorded this video yesterday, and this was my short youth message. I'm just going to play 1 minute of it. Go and watch the video. It's on the channel. Make sure you... That's how people are able to become successful. And on this Youth Day, I want to talk about chapter 2 of my book, Mr. Bitcoin. And if you haven't gotten a copy, copies are still available at Exclusive Books. But in chapter 2 of the book, I speak about a curious mind, a successful life. And that's page 19. And basically what I say in this book is that as a young person, be curious to learn. Keep your mind curious. When you see anything happening, don't just see it and say, oh, wow, I'm seeing something happening. That's interesting. No, see it and be curious. You know, recently I started to see a lot of AI startups come up all around the world. And there you have it. That was my message on Youth Day, a curious mind. And if you've got a young person that you know, share that message with them and let them know. And as many of you know, every single Monday we have an episode of The Fix Africa podcast, and we're actually renaming it to For This Reason. And my guest this week is Ronnie Muraudzi, and the podcast has just come out today. Go out there and watch it. It's an inspiring
financial performance,
story.
invest, in the expertise of management and the fact that they can pay dividends, new businesses and, early, not so much. But this one was different.
But this one was different, yeah.
And we thought there is a business case there to support. And so we put in I think 5 million in the first phase.
Nice, based on nothing. Proof of concept is something.
Yeah, so
yes.
we're like, guys, okay, that's fine. Get these 5 electric vehicles. I think at that time they had Woolies, DSV, and DHL probably to do that.
There you have it. Go and watch the Fix Africa podcast. It was an amazing interview. I truly was inspired. And remember, we're one big community here. So share this video with at least 10 people to educate them. And make sure you subscribe to this channel. And I will be seeing you soon to give you an update on everything that is going on in South Africa, making sure that you know what's going on, you're making the right decision, and you are well informed. Thank you so much for tuning in.